Okay, I think we're live. Hello there, and welcome to the stream. Um, Again, fairly last minute. Not really, not really had this planned for days or anything like that. But I figured I'd just come on and talk about this Star Trek um, movies. Those um, those wonderful 10. I'm not going to do the I'm not going to do the new Trek films unless um, somebody brings them up. I might teeter on them a little bit here and there, but we'll see. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about the Star Trek films. That will be 1 to 10. Not my, not all my favourites. We'll put it that way. But I'm just going to wait for some people to come in and say hello. I have the chat up, and it doesn't really work 9 times out of 10. In fact, YouTube Studio doesn't really think I'm streaming, apparently. So it's all good. It's all fully professional setup here. So there you go. Welcome to the stream if you're joining, and yeah, I'm going to go through all the original series films. Not going to really focus too much on the motion picture, although I do have some things I want to say about it. And if you do at any point, just let me know. I'm going to try and look at the camera, not the screen. I am a little tired, so I hope you'll forgive that. I'm going to talk about The Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, Final Frontier, and Discovery Country. Generations, First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis, which I'm not overly keen on. Nemesis, if you know me at all, you'll know that at least. I didn't really want to cover too much of the newer films because, well, they're a very different sort of Star Trek. I have also, I can't believe this. YouTube really gets my back up sometimes because you don't receive notifications 9 times out of 10 for like anything. You'll get notifications when people comment on your videos and when people like your videos to a certain degree, but mentions on YouTube sucks because it never really tells you, or it'll just decide not to tell you that you've been mentioned on another channel. And I have just seen a mention from back in August, so I'm going to have to get in touch with those guys. They're reviewing a review of mine, so I'll get in touch with them and apologise for not having seen it sooner. But I discovered it like 20-30 minutes ago. And once I'd done bouncing off the walls, I was... oh, God, I was so annoyed at YouTube. Anyway, yeah. Star Trek films. 1 to 10. At any point, if you feel that you want to tell me what your favourite Star Trek film is, please put it in the comments section. Just another watch nerd. Good to see you. How are you? Hello, Dangerman. A pleasant surprise. Well, thank you. I like being a pleasant surprise rather than an unwelcome one. So that's always nice to hear from people, and always nice to be here. Nice to do a stream. These streams are a little taxing because I spend all day at work and come home and do a stream, but I love doing these. It has been absolutely fantastic. They're a lot easier than YouTube reviews, but I'm not giving up on the reviews. I just think for the interim, whilst everything is quiet on the Star Trek front, it's a good idea to keep in touch with your audience. And I love every single one of you. So thank you very much for all the support and for joining me. I really should try and get some more guests on, but scheduling guests is just, it's so difficult. It really is. I've still got, with me and Clayton, we've still got to do part 2 of our favourite episodes. I think that one's going to be Deep Space Nine, I believe. Still got to schedule that in at some point. But it is so hard to get people's schedules to marry up, especially when it's not something that I do full time. So yeah, this stream is just going to be me chatting to you guys about your favourite Star Trek films, my favourite Star Trek films, and why they're my favourite, and what's changed a lot with me in the last 20 or so years. Since Nemesis came out 20 years ago. It's 2002, so it's 21 years ago, I think, if I'm not too much mistaken. 21 years. And yeah, my opinions have changed as I've gotten older, as I've looked at them in a retrospective manner. And I don't like to be overly harsh on the movies, because they're a big risk. The movies are always a big risk. A television show is very low risk. You know, it is. If you mess up in one episode, you've got another. Another however many episodes to right the ship. But a movie can be devastating if it fails, as we saw with the later Star Trek titles. But I'm going to start by focusing on the motion picture. And the motion picture sort of came out when I was not even a gleam in the eye of biology. So I was introduced to it sort of after I'd seen The Wrath of Khan and The Search for Spock and several various others. We'd never really owned the motion picture on home media, so it's very difficult to watch. When I did eventually get around to it, it's a very difficult thing to get hold of. And I watched, I think, at the same sort of around the same time, within a couple of months of one another. My dad and I sat and watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I'd watched the motion picture after that. And They were very similar styles, I thought, when I was younger. They were very similar styles. They were both very... they were both slow burn films. And I was a little too young to sort of understand really what was going on in the movie itself. But I went back and rewatched it nearly a decade ago, having not seen it since I was a kid. And it gave me a new appreciation for what it was trying to do. But ultimately it was extremely, apologise for the phone vibrating, ultimately it was very, very slow, and I suppose in some ways much to its detriment, because it's not aged particularly well. Hi Clayton. You're not sure you've ever seen the motion picture? Yeah, I've seen it. Like I say, I've seen it twice. It's one of those films. It was aimed at a very specific audience, obviously the original series audience, and it was the first venture into motion picture territory. I don't think the story, and this is the point I'm about to make, is a very similar story with other Star Trek films as well. I don't think it translates very well into a movie. It seemed like it would have been a much better episode of television than it was, a feature-length movie. But there were things about it that I could really appreciate at the time. The visual effects, for starters, were leaps and bounds ahead of the television show. Of course they were, because not only had it all moved on technologically speaking, but also it had a much bigger budget than a television show, which helped. Twins and fire photon torpedoes. Yeah. So yeah, visually it was stunning. I thought it was absolutely stunning, and I felt that they played around with that. They had this, they had access to all this new technology, and they were. It's where I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's where we got the notion of going to warp within a solar system. Doesn't really work because you create an Einstein-Rosen bridge, a wormhole, which wasn't really mentioned again in Star Trek very often. It was mentioned now and then, but it wasn't very often at all. It was mentioned, to my recollection, once in Deep Space Nine, but it wasn't a very good mechanic for the universe. It was a limitation which the writers just, I believe, chose to ignore. I liked the idea that a human-built space probe, which exists in the real world, had gone so far out into interstellar space that it had been, I would say, adopted or transformed into this all-powerful creature. And I thought that was really, entity. I thought that was a really interesting way to go. But it was very, drawn out. And the story I felt was elongated. I liked the dynamic between Kirk and Decker, isn't it? I liked the bounce back between them because Kirk is essentially missing the captain's chair. He wants to take control of the Enterprise, and Decker is like, hang on a minute, I'm in charge of this ship, and you basically commandeered it in an official capacity, and that's quite brutal. From what I remember of the motion picture, it was fine, but it wasn't until the Wrath of Khan that Star Trek really stepped it up a notch. And I don't, like I said, I didn't want to spend too much time on the motion picture because it was one of those things that I've rarely seen. But I remember enjoying it to a degree, in a roundabout sort of way. Probably not the way I enjoy the rest of the films, most of them. So, the Wrath of Khan, when Star Trek, as I said, stepped it up a notch. I believe it was the first ever Star Trek film that I'd seen, and we had it pre-recorded off the television, I think, at the time, and it was, I think, it was on a channel that ran adverts, so it was constantly being interrupted all the time, which was just infuriating. And it's one of the things that has stuck with me for most of my life is being interrupted by adverts. It's so rude. And don't get me wrong, advert breaks must happen. They have to get funding somehow, these channels and such. But even on YouTube, it's one of the most frustrating things to be interrupted by an advert. But I understand that's what makes the world go round. The Wrath of Khan, I think, was really, it was a game changer for Star Trek because it introduced such incredible stakes, and it was a direct tie to an original series episode with a character from the original series, and I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. When I first saw Khan, it was scary to me because I was, 10, 11 years old. There were aspects that were so scary, and Khan was this larger than life, menacing genius bad guy who had such presence and was so well written that you feared him, even though he was only a character on the screen. And what I found interesting is that the crew weren't actually together. Kirk had been promoted to admiral. He was no longer in the captain's chair. Chekhov was, stationed aboard the Reliant, if I recall, and I believe so. It was Chekhov on the Reliant, and the Enterprise was sort of part of a training crew. The Enterprise crew were part of a training crew. Clayton Rumley's Search for Spock is the earliest I remember seeing on TV, interrupted by ads, of course. Not sure I've seen Wrath of Khan in its entirety, but I've absorbed a lot through nerd osmosis. I'm not sure I've even seen Space Seed it's in its entirety either. That one I can relate to, the Space Seed one, because I if I have seen it, it was so many years ago. But it was but didn't you find it was unnecessary at the time to have seen Space Seed, because it was this enemy that Kirk clearly knew. You didn't need that reference point. Back in the day, you were able to just sit there and watch the film and enjoy it. And in this film, they obviously kill off a main character, which is wouldn't you agree that that's extremely brave of a franchise to do that? I mean, it wasn't a massive franchise at the time, but you think about the implications of killing off a character like that, especially a beloved one. I know that there was some news circulating, as before my time. I know there was some news circulating that Leonard Nimoy has said, enough is enough, I don't want to do any more Star Trek. And I wouldn't like to speak to the circumstances surrounding how he came back and everything. Other YouTubers have covered that quite well. But the opening scene of this film, I think, is one of the better gotcha moments, because at first glance it seems real, but then it's obviously a simulation. And I thought at the time, although it was quite a good sort of gotcha, it wasn't massively convincing to within the context of the movie. But I enjoyed seeing that possibility, them teasing that possibility early on, that these people are not invulnerable, and there's a good chance someone may not make it by the end of the film. And I really, it really sort of hit me very early on in the movie that could be a possibility. Holy crap, we could lose someone from the crew. And there was this new character called Saavik, and she was taking the Kobayashi Maru. And again, I think this is the first mention of the Kobayashi Maru. And the Kobayashi Maru, I think, is a superb Star Trek creation. It's absolutely phenomenal test, and it's very similar to what you would expect high-ranking officers to have to go through. But this is a training program at the academy. It's the Kobayashi Maru, and it was hopelessly translated in the new films and so poorly represented in the new films. But yeah, the Kobayashi Maru is it's the unwinnable test, and it's not about winning. It's about how you deal with losing, how you face the possibility that you die and your crew dies. It's an impossible situation to get yourself out of. And I don't know about you guys, but I spent a lot of time in my youth trying to beat the Kobayashi Maru in my head. I'd put the fundamental choices that you would have in front of me, and I was thinking, how would I get past that? How would I react in that situation? What would I do to try and beat the simulation? Of course, you can't beat the simulation, and although Kirk did, he cheated. But you can't beat the situation. You can only perform. And I liked the Next Generation, a little segment with Deanna Troi trying to take the bridge officer's test. in which she has to send a crewman to his death in order to pass the test, but she doesn't know that, and she has to figure that out on her own. And I thought that there's a little bit of a parallel there, a little bit of a similarity there with the Wrath of Khan. But yeah, the unwinnable, the unbeatable simulation, I thought was a cracking idea, an absolutely cracking idea. And the interesting concept of the Ceti Alpha system, and how when Kirk left Khan on Ceti Alpha 5, was it 5 or 6, and one of the planets exploded, which scientifically speaking would cause absolute chaos throughout the solar system. It would also, if you really think about it, when one of the planets is exploded, and the Reliance there going, this is Ceti Alpha 5, you would assume that they would know, where's the other planet? What's happened here? And the Ceti Alpha system, okay, Chekhov doesn't know, but Starfleet does, surely. So there were a few little issues there that I had, but mostly I bought it hook, line, and sinker because it was a Star Trek film. So there's a test for a device called Genesis, and Genesis would become, well, later in today's sort of time, it's become a bit of a meme. But Genesis, I thought, was a stupendous idea. The idea of creating a planet, a breather, terraforming essentially a planet from a small dead moon, lifeless. An absolutely superb idea, and in a very Star Trek way, dealing with the moral and ethical implications, the socio-political and military problems that would arise from creating such a device, playing God in that sense. Again, a very compelling idea. Very, how do I put this? A very interesting concept. Not new, but you're talking about Starfleet scientists wanting to create Eden and play God. And I liked how it followed on in the next film with regards to that concept. But you've got Khan, just by happenstance, the Reliant is the ship that's sent to scout for dead worlds. And they choose Ceti Alpha as, they want to try and see if it's a good proving ground, a good test body in order to create the Genesis planet and to test the terraforming weapon. But they do it in the same system that Khan has been left in, which I find it odd that entire solar system wouldn't be off limits. So obviously Chekhov doesn't really know Khan because Chekhov wasn't part of Space Seed. But yeah, at this point you can sort of infer that he's heard stories. But even though Khan says, yes, Chekhov, it's like, how do you know him? Regardless, when we see Khan, even if you don't know who Khan is, Ricardo Montalban has presence. You can hear, you can feel it through the television screen, and you think, "Holy crap, who's this dude?" And then you've got with this film, you've got the harrowing scene. I always found it so harrowing with the creatures that crawl in the ear of Chekhov and the captain. I forget his name now, but I used to thought that was harrowing, and it made me wince when I was younger. And Star Trek really didn't sort of handle that level of on-screen gore and kind of body horror in that sense. But it's tremendous scene. And it's how menacing Khan is throughout that exchange. You know, where he's he needs the information, he knows how to get it. He's obviously got creatures that can control the human body. And he's again, it's just the presence is fantastic. He's got such a commanding presence on screen and off. So he's able to hijack the Reliant through compelling Chekov and Captain to, you know, to allow them on board, and that's how he's able to escape Ceti Alpha. I like the fact that Khan doesn't immediately go for Kirk. He goes for collateral. He goes for real estate in terms of weaponry and in terms of power. He knows, he finds out about Genesis, obviously, because the Reliant is testing for the use of Genesis. But I love how it's such a tight story, isn't it? It's such a wonderfully tight story because everything happens for a reason. Everything is connected, and it's not beyond the realm of possibility. It's not contrived to such a massive degree that it's unbelievable. Clayton, I've always wondered how they kept the Kobayashi Maru secret from new applicants. Yeah, exactly. I have the exact same thought. Because you wouldn't, everyone would go, yeah, you're not faced with Kobayashi Maru. Unless they have to sign an NDA. You know, if they have to sign an NDA, then I suppose. But it would still leak out. You know, oh, you got this this test. I mean, I suppose they wouldn't be able to, they'd be able to change the test conditions. Say, by the way, you can't win this scenario. Do the best you can. That's probably what they say. Just do the best you can. There were lots of moments in The Wrath of Khan that I really, really enjoyed. And some iconic moments later became iconic moments. And essentially a submarine-style space dogfight. You know, a game of cat and mouse inside a nebula. But it was the logic... The logic bombs that were sort of dropped, where, and this goes to show how good the writing is. Khan eventually loses. Spoiler alert. Khan eventually loses because he may have superior intellect, and he may have. He may be a very smart man, but he's not a very experienced man. He doesn't understand how a starship works. He doesn't understand, you know, in that day, modern tactics. I'm very itchy today. Beg your pardon. And that's what I think. I think that the second of the new films was shit at. It was shocking at doing that, really, wasn't it? It was shocking at covering that because, you know, I won't stay on this for very long, but Marcus, the Admiral Marcus from Into Darkness, defrosted Khan to help him build a warship. Well, how the hell did he do that? Khan knows nothing about modern technology. It would be like recruiting Albert Einstein to run the Large Hadron Collider, or tell him to build a Large Hadron Collider. It just wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to do it. So that was absolutely ridiculous. But this version of Khan from Star Trek 2 he was the Khan. And I liked how clever they were with reiterating he may even have superior tactical strategies that are transferable from his era to modern era, but he doesn't have experience. He doesn't have the necessary experience to be able to ultimately defeat Kirk. And I thought that was breathtaking as a a solid story point. And I thought that level of thought is just nowhere to be seen these days. Robot Chicken's Wrath of Khan opera was great. I can't say I've seen it, I'll be honest with you. Can't say I've seen that at all. I know I have seen Robot Chicken, a lot of Robot Chicken, but I haven't seen that one in particular. It's funny, isn't it? Because Wrath of Khan is widely regarded as the best Star Trek film, and that's true from a certain point of view, from a certain perspective, and from certain criteria. That is definitely true. Khan was done really well pre-2005. No need to keep resurrecting his descendants in contrived ways. The best post-Khan style of bringing back genetically modified people, I think, was done in Enterprise with Cold Station and the augments, and explaining how the Klingons lost their ridges. I thought that was superb. But Jackie Doses, how are you? Good to have you here. That's what happens when you don't have any new ideas. You just keep putting leftovers in the microwave and reheating them. That is a good analogy, Clayton. I like that analogy. Jackie Doses, Into Darkness. Best to consider JJ Trek as having been written by cats prancing along a keyboard. Well, I don't know about you, but that's how I write my reviews. Just do me a favour, keep yourselves entertained. Unfortunately, it's a little cold up here, and nature is calling. Back in 2. Half an hour into a live stream, and I already needed to pee. I can't believe it. I thought I was going to be able to hold that, but no. So yeah, yeah, that's how I write my reviews. Just I'll borrow someone's cat, and I get it to write on the keyboard. And what do you know? I have a review then. Yes, Clayton Rumley, just ordered your book off Amazon. Oh, bless you. Retrek, yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Retrek. So the Wrath of Khan, yeah, is one of my it's definitely one of my favorites, definitely. And I like Star Trek movies in different ways for different reasons, different numbers for different ways and different reasons, because you can try and pull a main theme out of any one of the films, and if you focus on it in that way, they're all enjoyable in their own way. Maybe not Nemesis, but we'll get to that. But Wrath of Khan, I think, is objectively the best of the movies, or certainly was around that time. If you think of everything that has been released up until the point of Undiscovered Country, it was arguably or objectively the best. But Undiscovered Country was a tremendous film as well. And I think really unappreciated in its time. You know, we have we all have our favourites. But I think those two are objectively the best. But you could also break it down into original series movies and Next Generation movies. Because unfortunately we don't have any DS9 or Voyager movies. We got a couple of epilogue bits in that, but the Wrath of Khan is and will remain, I think, when the part where the point when Star Trek grew up a little bit, and it moved away from the ever slight cheesiness of the original. Honestly, all the pre-2005 films, apart from Nemesis, weren't bad. Yeah, again, it's a matter of perspective, I suppose. Because the Final Frontier is regarded as pretty much the weakest of all of them. And I can agree with that. It's not great. I believe it's Doomcock's way of looking at it, is that the Star Trek V is pretty much Kirk's dream when they're camping out in it's Yellowstone. Is it Yellowstone? Oh, one of the parks at the beginning of the film. And that entire film was just in Kirk's imagination. I like it a lot better when it's viewed like that, but there was a lot to be said for Star Trek V. And the story didn't really grip me. And there were a lot of errors in the filming and a lot of continuity problems. Going to the Great Barrier at the centre of the galaxy. And I think Discovery touched on that again, galactic barriers and stuff like that. It didn't feel too much like Star Trek. More like a bit of mysticism, which I didn't think had any place in it. But there were moments which were good and which were mildly entertaining. But overall, I think a pretty weak film. As a kid, my favourite was Voyage Home because I loved time travel and I liked the whales and the present day setting. Yeah. I'll just cover quickly Search for Spock, which when I was younger I thought was my least favourite, ignoring Star Trek 5. But as I've grown older, and I said this at the beginning of the stream, as I've grown older, my perspective has changed somewhat. Because I think The Search for Spock is definitely one of the better ones nowadays. Because the impact of what happens in that film is felt across the next film as well. And I like the fact that The Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home is like its own self-contained trilogy. Each film leads from one to the next. What's this? I didn't get YouTube notification. You know what? I covered that, Zell, at the beginning of my stream. I covered the fact that YouTube seemed to be absolutely useless at giving notifications of any sort. There's a YouTube video out there reviewing one of my reviews, and they've mentioned me and they've tagged me in it, and I didn't get a notification. I went on my mentions, and there it was, back in August. So I'm absolutely seething with them. Like I say, I shall get in touch with those guys and try and arrange something. But I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. So annoyed. Disco's galactic barrier was at the outer edge of the Milky Way, not the centre. Yeah. I think any kind of galactic barrier is a bit daft, really. One of my least favourite Trek aspects, that is. Yeah, I don't like the idea of barriers, galactic barrier. Oh, you can't leave the galaxy. Why not? Well, because there's a wall there and you can't get through it. Oh, okay. SR. Even Star Trek 5 seems to pick up a bit after 4. Yeah, I think there were certain elements because they'd gotten the new ship, and I love the fact that at the end of Voyage Home, they get the new ship. Oh, let's see what she's got, and then the fifth film it begins with the ship's in pieces. It's a nightmare. It's been looks like it's been cobbled together with chewing gum and duct tape, and Scott is just absolutely beside himself. Which you'd think he'd be in heaven, but he's beside himself because the ship's in a complete and utter state. I think the ship being in a state was clever. I think the captain's log recording device breaking, I think, was a little bit of a stretch. The Enterprise is in shambles, but the equipment that is on the bridge, separate to the ship, I think would be standard Starfleet equipment. I think that branches out to making Starfleet look like a bit of a hodgepodge mess when it comes to creating technology. Well, let's just bang it together. But I did like, I liked the continuation in the movies. But Search for Spock for me, really, my opinion just changed as I got older. I thought I watched the film back when COVID was a thing. We were in lockdown. My wife and I went through the all of the original series movies, apart from the motion picture, and I just sat there watching Search for Spock, and I thought, what a superb film, what a wonderful film. Again, with some inconsistencies here and there, but Star Trek. I never described Star Trek as being perfect. But Jackie Dozes. In book canon, the galactic barrier was made by the Q to protect against another Q level being named O. It's a good story. Shame they never made it canon proper. I like a bit of alternative perspective on why something is a thing. That's an interesting concept. I kind of like that. I agree. Search for Spock had, again, a dilemma facing Kirk's son, because Kirk's son designed Genesis along with the team of scientists, including Carol Marcus, and he cut corners. He included protomatter in the experiment, which is highly unstable, to accelerate the results, because otherwise Genesis probably would never have happened. And it also points to Genesis being quite flawed. So you've got the Genesis planet that's been made, when Khan set the device off. And the Genesis world was so diverse. That term is overused these days, but it was a very diverse planet in terms of climate and different and all the the sectors. They call them sectors. You call them continents or whatever. And it was all very different and very alien. I quite liked that, but the implication, I think, was a little bit overstretched. Not overstretched. What's the word? What do I say to that? It's when Savick says, "How many people have died because of your arrogance?" It's like, okay, so the team of scientists died. All of Khan's crew died. They were the bad guys. As soon as any enemy of the Federation found out about Genesis, there was going to be a shitstorm, no matter what. All David has done is put an accelerant in the Genesis device to make the planet happen. Now, I don't think David creating Genesis led to deaths. It did. Same as Oppenheimer with the H-bomb. With the, it all leads to death. The death of the Grissom's crew, for example. Grissom is destroyed. But Grissom is destroyed by the Klingons who want Genesis. So that David has created Genesis. The fact that he used an accelerant in Genesis has nothing to do with people dying. That just means the planet's going to explode. It would have potentially caused quite a stir if the Federation settled the colony on there and it exploded. But I always thought that was a bit strange, piling all that onto David, because David created something. And the deaths occurred because he created something, not because he, like his father, cheated. But obviously that's not the point. I love when Kirk gets ordered because of the ownership in Rage stick, and Kirk goes, "Oh, please." Kind of an inside acknowledgement of how silly that trope is. Yeah, good one. Star Trek V is a weird film. It's got a load of great big ideas with maybe not the greatest execution. Makes up for it with amazing character moments. There were some really good character moments in 5. David was a way of showing Kirk that you can't always cheat your way out. There will eventually be consequences. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I get that, but I thought Savik's words were a little bit harsh, I suppose. You're going to have a go at him for creating Genesis in the first place. The dynamic there between with David and Savik it was really good, but I think the best scene I've seen Shatner in is that scene on the bridge when Savik says David is dead. And at that point, I found a whole new level of respect for Shatner. The other scene, of course, was in The Wrath of Khan, where, Rez goes, of all the souls that I've encountered in my travels, that I don't know about you guys, but when someone's giving a eulogy or a speech or something and they waver, that's what makes me waver. It's a very reactive thing, and I waver because they waver. And that moment was one of Shatner's best, matched, if not exceeded, only by when he finds out David, the Klingons have killed David. That was a truly wonderful, not positively, but it was wonderfully performed, and you gain a little respect for Shatner in that moment. Shatner's a cracking actor. Yeah, he gets a lot of shit for having overacted all of these roles, but he truly was and truly is a tremendous actor in those moments, and the moments between Kirk and Spock are some of my absolute favourites. I apologise now if this stream's not making an awful lot of sense, and I'm not making an awful lot of sense. Like I say, I really should have got a guest on, but I just wanted to talk about the movies. And I think throughout the 6 films, the trio, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, is explored so very well and so thoroughly. I think in some ways more than the original series. Star Trek V was the start of a bad tradition of previously unmentioned Spock siblings Oh God, yeah, yeah. I hadn't even thought about that. Cybok, Cybok. I have a half brother and a stepsister, half stepsister sibling. Uh, think about it this way. Uh, Spock could easily say at that point, "I have a half brother who wants to find Jesus, and a sister that is space Jesus." My God, God and space Jesus. Yeah. You think people watch these writers and people involved in creation of New Trek watch these films and go, that's what I'll take away from that. Spock is clearly connected to all these, these really biblical people. These people who are space Jesus and people who wanted to find God in this at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Oh, just crazy. At least Cybok is more believable than Burnt Ham. Still gonna make me laugh. Burnt Ham. Yeah, yeah. Cybok was an interesting one, really. A Vulcan. He was Vulcan, wasn't he? He laughed. He was half Vulcan or whatever. It was an interesting character. I don't think he worked well as Spock's brother, though. I think it would have worked a lot better if he was Spock's mentor, rather, when Spock was young, rather than a brother. I don't think it worked that well. Zell, I love how David's death has repercussions, especially in Star Trek VI, where Shatner has another great acting moment when he argues with Spock after the Starfleet meeting. Oh yeah, that's a superb moment, isn't it? Jim, they're dying. Let them die. That again, real vitriol in his reaction, real hatred for the Klingons and because of what the Klingons did. Superb. I love how, like we've said previously, I love how each film has an implication for another film. They can reference. It can be self-referential, but in a positive way, not in the modern way that people like to do it. I thought it was really cool. Sarek must have run some weird space cult. To be fair, searching for our creator has been around in Trek since Nomad. Yeah, that's it's a fair point. I think if Star Trek's allowed to do this, but it doesn't make for great sci-fi. It's good in a philosophical sense, and Star Trek has delved into the philosophy of creation theories and all of that quite well now, and only now and then. But ultimately, it is a science fiction show. I think they. I don't understand the logic with 5, and I don't understand. It's like you've got Cybok, and he's trying to get to Shakari, or he's trying to find Shakari. And it's a planet in the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Before we knew there was a black hole there. And they've gone to the center of the galaxy through the galactic barrier, come across it, and they go through all the the blue space fire and everything, and they find a planet with this life form who claims to be what they're looking for. That is, to me, a massive convenience. There just so happens to be a life form there that that claims to be God. And don't get me wrong, there's some great little Kirk moments in there. He goes, he just peeks out and goes, "Excuse me, what does God need with a starship?" That some great lines and everything, but I always found that really a little bit too convenient, because the chances of finding something at those, in the center of the galaxy that is the answer to all creation, I thought it's just very bizarre. It never really gelled with me that well as a science fiction story. And I know it was a bit of a Kirk, a bit of a Shatner project, really, wasn't it? Cyborg didn't need to be a half brother. He could have easily been a full brother, another half Vulcan, and that would have explained his embracing of emotion, taking the opposite road to Spock. Yeah, could be. If Nomad was a metaphor, then it was a brilliant one. Yep. 5 was supposed to be way more ambitious and better story, but the writers' strike at the time really hurt the film. The film was also hurt by a terrible VFX budget, and terrible VFX. My God, it's a bit of an eyesore to watch, is it not? Star Trek 5 is it's like when they fly the shuttle into the ship and the ship goes to warp. It was like stop motion animation. It was really jarring, and it really did hurt the film a lot. Now I want to hear you reenact the Nexus scene from Generations with Kirk and Picard doing your impressions of them. Which scene from Generations? When I get to Generations, I might do that. Yeah, I'll just do it with Old Man Picard. But yeah, five was an oddball. I can still watch it and enjoy it to a degree, but it's not. I much prefer it when you think of it as from the perspective of Kirk it being a dream. It all being a dream. It's the it's the one thing I did notice, and I always remember this when I was watching it, is when they're shooting up the turbo lift and it goes level 26, level 52, and then level 37 or level 70. It's like, how tall is this ship? But it's like the way they show them, they're doing this, going up and down. And I thought, how did that make it past the edit? It was a bit of a lazy execution of a film, but it was, like I say, it's watchable. But the Undiscovered Country, I think, is one of the best. And it was the comedy in that film, I think, that really helped it. The other films had a degree of comedy, but it was so well balanced, the sixth film, between seriousness and Spock being Spock. It was Spock. I think this was a great Spock film. It was a great film for the trio because it was predominantly focused on the trio, and it was really. It was so well written, and the modern technology, you started to see a little the effects were coming into a new era, and you were able to see the Enterprise, and the Enterprise bridge looked a bit more modern. It was fewer buttons and more panels, and I like that Sulu had got his own ship. Now the Excelsior, which is, I think, the ship that he wanted. He had referenced it in the previous films. Oh my, I like Excelsior. And he's now the captain. And you had that little Christian Slater cameo. And the whole premise of the film and the whole situation that they find themselves in, and this is a good resolution for Kirk and the Klingon problem, and it's a very well
well written, and it's a film, and it's a tight film as well. I always thought it was a tight film. SD5 was also William Shatner's movie. The whole idea of searching for God was his idea. Yeah. God's got to be out there somewhere. In Undiscovered Country was the first Star Trek film I saw in the theatre. Really? Well, for me, it was Generations. Generations was my first ever Star Trek movie experience. It was great. It was great. In hindsight, not a great film, but it was a great experience. First Star Trek film I saw in the cinema, and I remember getting a very naughty time coded copy on VHS that someone did. They in video stores, they have a time coded copy so they can proof the film before they decide whether they want how many copies to to order for rent. And there was a video store owner. He was very good to me. He got me time coded copies of Generations and First Contact, so I had them on VHS, so I didn't have to go and spend £15 on the VHS. The only thing is, it would every now and then it would come up with the property. This movie is this time coded copy. They're supposed to destroy those copies after they get them, but I got special treatment. It was really cool. Alan Scott, I am an oldie. I saw Star Trek 4 in the theatres. Bless you. I was... Star Trek 4, when did that come out? Was that 86? No. I couldn't even tell you when it came out. Star Trek 60 is my personal favourite, says Zell. It's such a great film, a good example of proving both sides of a conflict in equal measures. Good and bad with a positive message. Kunstman has a lot to learn. I don't think he's willing to learn. That's the problem. I don't think Kurtzman is willing to learn at all. And you notice that with the hubris of these people. They don't... They'd much rather tell their version of Star Trek and tell you your version is wrong, while simultaneously telling you that they're respecting your version. It's terrible. SR, I'm really old. I saw The Wrath of Khan in the theatres. Doesn't make you really old, mate. Don't you feel old because you saw Wrath of Khan in the theatres. Generations was my first too. I was 7 and left the theatre in tears because Kirk died. I was astounded when they killed Kirk. Absolutely astounded. And if you can believe it, my dear viewers, my loyal subscribers, if you can believe it, I need another pee. Fuck. I'm trying to... It's filling up. It's just like someone's pouring some water really, really loudly in my bladder. I need another pee. I shall go in a moment. But yeah, the Generations was great. I in the cinema, it was superb. And I always remember, because I was quite young. When did Generations get made? It's 96? 1996. Generations, Star Trek Generations. 1994. Wow. So I was 11. I was 11 in 1994. So I went to the cinema when I was 11 to see Star Trek Generations. And Star Trek Generations, I thought it was a fine movie and a very good idea to bring together the two, at that time, iconic captains. Because the other captains weren't a thing. I don't think they were a thing. I think Deep Space Nine had just started. But I thought it was a great concept. The Nexus was a superb concept. And recently I've seen... I keep going off on tangents. I don't really care. Fuck it, I'm talking. No one can stop me. Yeah, I read something recently. I'm sure I saw it on Facebook or something, where the idea that everything that happened after Star Trek Generations is Picard's experience in the Nexus, because he never left and all the crew died when Viridian 3 was destroyed. I thought, I see. wouldn't that be an interesting thought to have if First Contact, Insurrection, Nemesis, Picard, and all of that never took place because they all perished? I thought that would be really funny. 94, yeah, 94. Wow, 11 years old. So yeah, it was my first major Star Trek. It was my first Star Trek film in the cinema, and I was because I was 11, and I didn't really have my brain switched on. The opening of that film, I saw this champagne bottle flying through space, and I was like, okay, it's a champagne bottle. And there was one scene where the champagne bottle comes, the base of the champagne bottle comes into view, and all the stars start reflecting. And for a split second, I thought that was the original Enterprise. Because the bottom of the wine bottle has got corrugations around the edge. I thought that was the main navigational deflector. And I went, oh, wow. And my dad says, what? It's just a bottle. It was a very Monty Python moment because he was, it's only a bottle. But that for that split second, I thought that was a ship. Of course, it was a bottle. And then it hit the ship, and I'm looking at this ship that looks like the Excelsior, and it was the Enterprise B. And I was really confused at the time. I was thinking, what am I watching here? You know, I thought it was a Next Generation film, and that's where the film progresses and you understand what's going on. And I thought it was a great way to bring the two captains together. What I didn't like, and what I thought was really unnecessary, was Kirk's death and the way Kirk died. And I thought it was not a fitting way for Kirk to pass. I mean, they do the fake out at the beginning with Kirk. He's sucked out into space, and you think, oh, well, that's how Kirk died. But he was thrown into the Nexus. And I thought, yeah, Kirk's death was, I feel unnecessary. And it would have opened Star Trek, would it not, to so many more possibilities in terms of directions that you could go. Yes, you've got the Next Generation, and you got Kirk. You could have had Kirk. I believe you could have had Kirk, Spock, and Scotty all together, and you could have had a reunion of sorts. Yeah, DeForest Kelley wouldn't have been there, but I know that the Return. The Shatner books, The Return, pretty much covers the possibility of Kirk not having died or being reanimated and stuff. And I thought, yeah, I know that there's probably worse ways for him to die, but I didn't see that. Saw people coming out of Generations looking sad and somewhat angry. It was truly at the end of an era. Yeah, it was. Kirk originally got shot in the back, but they refilmed it. Wow. I mean, imagine how unpopular that would have been. Kirk being shot in the back. Captain Kirk being shot in the back. Ooh. Yeah, I wouldn't have liked that. That would have been quite this sour ending for Kirk. But, I mean, it was buried under a rock pile by Picard. I was like, why? He's on the same planet as the Enterprise is orbiting. I do hope they exhumed the body eventually. I think they did, or they made reference to the fact that they exhumed the body because in Picard season 3, Kirk's in the section 31 vault. Oh, he's in the vault, the Member Berry vault in Picard season 3. I remember the previews for Generations had Kirk say a line like, the 24th century isn't that hard, but it must not have made it into the movie because every time I watch, I look for it. Yeah, there was a lot I remember reading magazines before Generations came out, and there was a lot of things in there that were being promised, and they never made it into the film. The film seemed so much shorter than it probably should have been, and you felt it. But Kirk is alive now, just in a vault. Yeah, he's been vaulted. Vaulted for future use. Although I don't think Shatner's up to it lately. He's still going, old Will Shatner, but he's getting old. They're all getting old. We're all getting old. Isn't it tragic when you see people getting old? It's terrible. Even I'm getting old. I'm getting grey in my beard. Which, for 40 years old, I'm not really moaning. You know, a lot of people turn grey a lot quicker than that. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to go for a pee again. I know. My bladder is terrible in the winter. Absolutely terrible. Keep yourselves entertained. I will return very shortly. I'm back. Suitably refreshed. I'm so sick of cold. I really am. Anyway, yes, where were we? 40-year-old bladder strikes again. God. You're not wrong. But it's also the fact that it's getting to winter, and I've had something like 3 cups of tea in the last sort of 2 hours, so it's not really very good. At 46, I can relate. Bless you. It's so sucky getting old. Man, you're showing your age, having to pee so often. And like I say, literally, it is the temperature. It happens every winter. As soon as it starts getting anything below sort of 10 degrees, that's it. Especially in the evening, I'm like, oh my God. I'm just thankful it's not during the night, because getting up, 5 times a night, I'm not looking forward to that. Gelosia time. You're not wrong, yeah. Except my gelosia does not happen once a year. It's like once every 20 minutes. Clayton, I often wonder why actors wouldn't want to play the same character forever, especially when it has such a huge cultural impact. But as a programmer, I like moving on to new projects, so I get it. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's easy. It's the divide, isn't it, between writer and actor. You look at Michael Dorn's attitude towards Worf, for example. He knows Worf. He plays Worf, and he doesn't like it when writers write Worf differently to how Worf would act. And they're a bit precious about their characters that they're playing. But I understand people wanting to move on to other things. You get bored of playing the same character over and over again. I think I don't like it when actors are disrespectful to the characters that they are playing, because, like it or not, they are portraying a character that you have invested time to get to know. And when an actor turns around and says, "Oh, I couldn't be, I don't want to play Picard again," I don't think Patrick Stewart had that attitude. It's like he wouldn't come back and play Picard unless he had like creative control. And I don't think it's very good when they turn around and basically diss the character, because ultimately ultimately, when you're watching a television show or a movie, or you know, and you've got a favourite character, who do you care about more, the character or the actor? I mean, the actor sustains the character, but ultimately, who do you care more about? The you don't care about the actor's opinions on anything really. You care about the character. That's the person you're getting to know, the character that the actor is portraying. So when an actor turns around and says, "Oh, you know, I don't really like playing that character. It's flawed, or I don't want to do it anymore," you kind of take it a little bit personally, especially on the character's behalf. Zell, physically I'm 36, mentally I'm 106. I don't know, I flutter mentally with my mental age between sort of late 90s and early single digits, depending on who you ask. If it's my wife, I act like a child a lot of the time, but in a fun way. That's fine. SR, unrelated, now that the strike is over, it means more new Trek is on the way. Good Lord. And yeah, so we'll look forward to more reviews on this channel, I would imagine, because, you know, I should really try and review something else until it comes along, but who has the time? But yeah, back to Generations. I am going to have a little sip because I'm thirsty, but I'm only a little sip. Watch. There you go, little sip. I'm not filling that bladder up again too quick. It's going to do that itself. Generations. I know this is a bit of a hippity hoppity back and forth with the films, but Generations was I thought a solid Next Generation episode with a big budget. I did like the bridge redesign. I may be in the minority there, but I really loved the Enterprise D bridge redesign, and I love the fact that the Enterprise D looks so damned good. It really did. All the shots of the Enterprise D were superb, but there was one shot that really didn't feel right and really didn't look right. And there was a shot where Picard's doing his, captain's log about data and an emotion ship not being able to be removed. And the Enterprise comes into shot and it flies over the camera. And the Enterprise looks white, like it's seen a ghost. It looks so white and pale, and it looks awful in that shot. The rest of the movie, it's well lit. You've got solar reflections reflecting off the hull, and the bit where they escape the shockwave from the exploding star. That was superbly lit and looked fantastic. And then you got this one scene where the Enterprise comes over, and it's just Daz white. It looked so out of place. It looked awful. But most of it was really nice, and like I say, the sets had a bit of a darker feel to it. They played around with some different lighting effects, which I thought was interesting. Some of it I liked, some of it I didn't like, but I thought it feels more realistic, because when you're in when you're orbiting a planet in a solar system, and it's a planet that's kind of close to its star, not too close, it's in the Goldilocks zone, the starlight would come through the room. And when you're going to a solar observatory that's right next to a star, the lighting effects that they did, I thought were fantastic. You wouldn't need the lights on because you've got this giant star out the window that's illuminating the ship. I thought that was really interesting. It was a bit of a change, but you could tell there was a bit of a higher budget there. And I really did like what they chose to do. Zell, Patrick Stewart. Oh no, sorry. Let me. I think I'm skipping over a few there. Clayton, sounds like Disney is backpedaling on some of its creative directions. Maybe other properties will follow suit. Possibly, but Disney's in the forefront right now, whereas New Trek, enough people like New Trek inexplicably that I think it's not really going to affect Star Trek. I think they believe they're on the right path, because they've split the fan base. Quite literally split it down the middle. It's not a good place to be. Patrick Stewart should not have been given creative control, says Zell. Good actor, bad writer. Someone was waxing head as much as his ego. Yeah. You don't mess with a character that's been written by another person if you're the one portraying that character. You can set boundaries for the character, but you can't write a character. If you haven't written a single line of dialogue that has been spoken by your character, if someone else has done it, they are the character. You're portraying that character, you're bringing life to that character, but the writer is determining the baseline for the character. I loved the bridge redesign in Generations. The big D never looked so good. That's one way to put it. Yeah, it did look good. And I thought Malcolm McDowell was superb as Soren. He was brilliant. It was so menacing and comical in a very classically British way. I love Malcolm McDowell. He's great in everything. He is, and he's become a great meme for Star Trek Discovery. This is great. But no, Generations was a cool concept. I really liked it as a concept. It just felt like a big budget episode. And they killed Kirk. They destroyed the Enterprise. So it was a bit of a double whammy for Star Trek fans, really, in some ways, because we lost two characters in that film. We lost Kirk, and we lost the Enterprise D because it could not be salvaged. Regardless of what happened in Picard Season 3, it couldn't be salvaged. There was no way they could turn it into an operational ship again. But Geordi can with 20 years, I suppose. But we lost two characters. And losing the Enterprise D didn't have a big impact on me in the cinema. It really didn't. It was only when First Contact came out and I saw the new Enterprise that I really felt the loss of that ship. And it was a kind of a search for Spock moment, wasn't it, really? Where you don't... When I was too young to understand the gravitas of the Enterprise being destroyed, I didn't really view the Enterprise as a character because I was too young to put it in that kind of context on my own, unguided. And losing the Enterprise, the original Enterprise, didn't really shock me. It was only later on in my life where I rewatched the film and thought, wow, the implications of that are absolutely gobsmacking. The Enterprise has been destroyed. And it was the same thing for the D. Losing the D in the way that we did was gutting for me. It was absolutely gutting. When I realised the implications, because I went back and watched The Next Generation, I was like, holy shit, that ship gets destroyed. That's brutal. Absolutely brutal. And then the Enterprise E comes along. And I'll go into what I think about the E a little bit later. But Generations, I thought was an okay film. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was cleverly done in some respects. But it did feel like a very Next Generation experience rather than a feature film, which moves us very neatly into First Contact. First Contact. Again, film I saw at the cinema. I did see First Contact at the cinema. Clayton, I own a copy of the Nitpicker's Guide for the Next Generation Trekkers. It was great fun to read and had a section on Generations. I'll have to look at that. We lost Kirk and the Enterprise, but we gained Data with emotions. Very true. We also lost the Duras sisters. Yes, we did. Or did they survive it? No, they didn't survive it. The bridge blew up. Well, actually, did they survive it, or because they could have just projected a holographic image of Chang's ship exploding because they reused the footage, which I didn't enjoy in Star Trek. I don't enjoy it in any kind of Star Trek, reusing old footage. I know that they do it for budgetary reasons, and I'd probably do the exact same thing if I was then. You've got the assets, you may as well use them to save yourself a bit of dosh. But it's not even the keen eye of the internet, because it didn't exist back then. When you see things being reused, stock footage reused and stuff like that, I didn't like that in Generations. You've got all this big budget to make the Enterprise D look this good. Why not make a Klingon ship explode in a different way than it did in the previous film? It's not like they waited a film or two. They used the exact same shot of the bird of prey exploding as they did in the previously released film. I love seeing the Enterprise B. Always felt Captain Harrison could have had a good redemption arc of his own, a young captain out of his depth, feeling responsible for Kirk's death, maturing and growing. That would have made a good show. That would have made a good a good mini series, I think, because you never really find out what happened to him after. Imagine you've been promoted to captain. You're relatively inexperienced as a captain, but you would have been an experienced first officer or commander. And you've been given not only a ship named Enterprise, one of the most legendary ships you can ever hope to have, but it's a brand new Enterprise, new crew, new ship, and you are its captain. And on your maiden test voyage, which has the celebrity of 3 of the original crew, including the legendary Captain Kirk himself. On your very first test run, you're on a mission. Captain Kirk is killed when it should have really been you. You're not responsible, but a legend has died on your ship on its maiden voyage. Not good. You will have a lot of questions to answer, and I think his career may possibly have ended there. But it'd be interesting to sort of know where the writers wanted to take him. I thought Alan Rook was brilliant in that. Especially the doesn't arrive till Tuesday was just a perfectly executed little joke, inside joke there. Tractor beam. We now have a tractor beam. You left space dock without a tractor beam. The interactions between Kirk and Picard in that was brilliant. It was brilliant. At times it felt a little off, but Kirk was just is quite comedic and all of that. But I did appreciate it. I did appreciate seeing the 2 captains bounce off of one another. Picard being so very Starfleet, and Kirk being Starfleet, but I'm still Kirk. I did get into First Contact, but I bounced back to Generations for some reason. I liked that Picard tried to lecture Kirk, just saying, you're a Starfleet officer, you have a duty. And Kirk's just like, I don't need to be lectured. I'm not going to do the impression. I don't need to be lectured by you. I was out saving the galaxy when your grandfather was in diapers. I love the fact that Kirk's just cooking and he's enjoying seeing his house, his old house, and Picard's just like, wake up, you fool. It's really good. They also reused the same shot of Geordi rolling under the door during the warp core breach. Did they? When did they do that? You're going to have to help me out on that one. I can't remember. The music was also good. The Generations overture always brings a tear to my eye. Yeah, he's Goldsmith, isn't it? His music is so powerful and so emotional. It's great. I love Star Trek scores. They're fantastic. Not the new stuff, but I love Star Trek scores, and Generations was a good one. I thought First Contact music was really good as well. Very, very, very interesting. I'm going to have to move on to First Contact. First Contact, again, I saw it in the cinema. First Contact was my favourite Star Trek film of the modern, the next generation ones. It was superb. It blew me away how much that they evolved the Borg and how much they made the Borg so much more, so much darker and so much more menacing. It was superb. The Borg was superb. The story was great. Yeah, it was a bit of a contrived time travel story, but it was superb. I loved it, and I loved it, and I loved it. And now, how do I feel about it? Now being a good deal older than I was when it came out. 26 years ago-ish. 27, 28, nearly. Oh, God. I don't even want to say that out loud anymore. I believe First Contact was the first movie to have an official website. Didn't know that. I remember seeing the cast appeared on the National Lottery draw in the UK, and Marina's 30s said something about a football team, and the crowd and the audience booed her. I thought that was really funny. And they said, "Yeah, not sure about that." But they came in and pressed the button on, Galahad or Excelsior or whatever the fucking name of the lottery machine was. But yeah, First Contact, I absolutely loved it. And now, looking back, with older eyes, I can see why it felt a lot less like Star Trek, like a Star Trek movie. It was a action-heavy Star Trek film, with some interesting elements, but not much in the way of the philosophical nature of Star Trek, and a lot of the themes that Star Trek brought to the fold. First Contact didn't really do anything to expand much of the philosophical side of Star Trek. However, it did delve a little deeper into Picard and his Borg past, his dark Borg past. It was the exact same scene, dialogue, and all from yesterday's Enterprise. I do beg your pardon. I'll have to rewatch yesterday's Enterprise. It has been a while. But yes, First Contact. We had a new ship. We had the Enterprise E, which I quickly fell in love with. I still think to this day it is one damn sleek, sexy-looking ship. As far as ships go. The Enterprise D had curves. The Enterprise E was very sleek and was really, I think, it's a bit weird looking, but it was just so sleek. I loved it. I had the model kit. I built the model kit. I don't have it anymore. I don't believe it survived all the moves. But yeah, I loved the Enterprise E. I didn't quite like the new bridge. I think it was kind of featureless, and I don't think it had enough character about it. There was nothing. It looked like the inside of the ship looked far too much like a military vessel. And I know that was probably the point because it's not a Galaxy class ship, but I felt it was just. I know it needed to be dark and everything, but I don't think it was light enough. I don't think it was optimistic enough. It was like the Enterprise D in Generations, except that was dialed to 100, and I don't think it was the most attractive internally. I didn't I liked the engineering set to a degree, but I think that was just a big set for a big movie budget, I suppose. It wasn't the nicest internally, but externally, I was very impressed with First Contact, with the First Contact Enterprise E. Clayton Cochran's character development in that movie was interesting, and how our historical heroes are viewed through rose-coloured lenses. Yeah, weren't we accused, Clayton, of looking at Star Trek through rose-tinted glasses? And it's interesting because you know Cochrane is viewed as this hero, and it's the very definition of do not meet your heroes. And a lot of the engineering crew meet Cochrane, and they're just absolutely starstruck with him. And he is just this, you know, in their minds, he's this larger than life character, but in reality, he, you know, I love the fact that he justifies having built the warp engine and the Phoenix as a way to get money so he could retire to a tropical island filled with naked women. And he had such purely selfish motivations for doing so, but without realizing it ushered in this new era for humanity. In purely a seemingly random occurrence, but I think he was. It like you say, it was very interesting to see how they viewed him, and how they revered him, and how much he did not enjoy what the future held for him in being this, you know, revered game changer for the future of humanity, just because he built this ship. I love the fact that he can't handle being a statue. He can't handle being revered, so he just runs away. So that's very, very entertaining. I like to imagine Worf got a lot of flack for ruining the Defiant. If Sisko had been there, the Borg wouldn't have had a chance to go back in time. Yeah, true. I always thought Deep Space Nine should have handled the aftermath of what happened to the Defiant. You know, because when they go back to the future, and obviously Worf's got to get back to Deep Space Nine, and the Defiant's got to be towed back to the station. I would have absolutely loved seeing an episode of Deep Space Nine where Worf is bringing back the Defiant, and he goes up to ops to the captain's desk, and the captain turns around to him and goes, "What the hell did you do to my ship?" Or something along those lines. It would have been nice to see some bleed over into Deep Space Nine, and O'Brien just looking at the scene of Defiant being towed in, and he goes, "Ay, Jesus." You imagine it, the Defiant being just towed in pieces, and it goes, "Ay, Jesus." And Worf just going, "It was not my fault." That would have been absolutely phenomenal. But I think it only gets a brief mention, doesn't it, as the recent Borg attack, with Starfleet being spread pretty thin. I would have loved to have seen that. But the Defiant in the film, it was designed to fight the Borg, and it gets its chance, and it gets battered. You know, this weapon that was designed, this weapon ship that was designed to fight the Borg, and it gets its ass handed to it. But I think it's an extension of Worf, and if you think of Worf as the character in the two-parter of Deep Space Nine, where the Cardassians join the Dominion, and we find out they go to the prison, and Worf's just constantly getting back up and refuses to yield. I think that's the Defiant, because he refuses to yield. And I love the fact that Worf just goes, "You know what, perhaps today is a good day to die. just ram the fucking Borg cube with the Defiant. I thought that was absolutely superb. But it's also superb to see the Defiant in scale with the Enterprise E, because the Defiant's just been hit by this weapon, and it sort of dints, doesn't it? And then you see the Enterprise E come past, and it fills the screen and goes past, and you think, it really is a little ship, isn't it? Compared to the flagship, you know. I thought it was really good, and I thought that you know, there were a couple of inconsistencies with Star Trek science and Star Trek lore. You know, with the Enterprise would have to drop its shields to beam the Defiant survivors aboard, and that would take time. If there were many survivors, you know, if say half the crew survived, you've got a complement of 50 people. That's 25 people you've got to beam aboard. That takes time. You can't beam through the shields, and that would leave the Enterprise vulnerable to a Borg attack. And also, the Enterprise E doesn't suffer much damage at all. I know that they're the most advanced ship in the fleet, but it's just like they take a little pounding and they go, and that's it. You know, the Enterprise E in some ways seemed almost indestructible in that sense. And the Borg opening up a temporal distortion, and the Enterprise just happened to get caught in the wake. Again, I thought that was a real convenience, a plot convenience, you know, because if the Enterprise hadn't been caught in the temporal wake, the Borg would have been instantly successful. I thought it was just weird. The E was a sexy, badass ship. Sovereign class is still one of my favourites. Yeah, and I like the fact that they're called Sovereign class, because they are sovereign. You know, they've got some prestige and some presence about them. You put them next to a Galaxy class, I'd always take the Galaxy class, of course. But yeah, Defiant wasn't built to fight the Borg. It was built to fight the Borg and got thrashed. Yeah, as I say, you know. It did hold its own, though. It did withstand the attack. While other ships were getting one Borg torpedo and just spiraling into a death sprawl, you know, whilst exploding, the Defiant it really did hold up. You know, it's this little ship, and you got these other ships, these Venture class ships being destroyed and just instantly. You know, one of the ships gets enveloped by the explosion from the Borg cube. I thought that was hilarious. It's sort of like, it's blowing up, steer left. And then it just goes, poof, and gets instantly vaporized. Thought that was really good. But yeah, the Enterprise conveniently gets caught in a temporal wake, and they're able to see what Earth was like after the Borg had made their changes. They were able to observe, and the fact that Earth is just brown and grey, I thought was really interesting, and the Borg have clearly assimilated Earth and the Federation, and they head back, and it's near first contact. Interesting concept, interesting execution. I liked some of the moments with the crew. Beaming down and all of that. I thought that was really good. You know, trying to repair the Phoenix. And I didn't like, because Voyager made reference to this in the episode Relativity. They made reference to this moment where, you know, the Enterprise goes, they say it's like a closed loop, or no, a paradox of some sort. Anyway, Alex trying to explain it. They 7 of 9 intimates that the Enterprise going back in time and helping Cochrane fly the Phoenix was the reason the Phoenix was able to fly. 7 of 9 intimated that if the Enterprise hadn't gone back in time, the Phoenix flight would have been a failure because the Phoenix never made the flight, and it only made the flight because the Enterprise went back and intervened and ended up repairing the ship with modern technology and, and modern ingenuity, and made the warp flight possible in the first place. I didn't necessarily agree with that, and I didn't like that predestination crap. I always thought it was good that they stopped the Borg interfering too badly with the plans, with the occurrence, the event, and they managed to get them back to a point where the warp flight was possible. I didn't like the introduction of the Borg Queen. I'm just putting that out there now. I didn't like the I didn't like the hive mentality with the Queen controlling it all. She's an individual. I didn't really like that at the time, because to me the Borg were just this force. They were spreading throughout the galaxy, and they were relentless, and they were all one voice. There were no individuals, and I didn't like the fact that the Borg Queen was a thing. It was an individual controlling the entire collective. But you've got to sort of centralize the bad guy. You can't just have a movie about the Borg taking over. You have to have a focal enemy, I suppose, in that sense, for a motion picture. But that concept just carried on throughout the rest of Star Trek. You have to remember there is more than one transporter pad on board too, plus cargo transporters. They could do it very quickly. Very true, but the shields would still be down in the middle of a Borg attack, and I don't think that would be very beneficial. But again, the Enterprise just seemed built like a brick shithouse. Enterprise's tie-in with the events of the movie was good. Yes, I agree with that. Absolutely, we'll cover that in a favourites. I think that we're in our favourite episodes when we eventually get to Enterprise. We'll cover that one, I think. They're hard to believe no one caught the name Borg in all of that. Yeah. Somehow the name never made it to the 24th century. Not a lot of people like the addition of the Queen. Yeah, I didn't. It didn't gel very well with me, and the kissing with Data seemed a bit off as well. Although I did like the repeat of the line, "I am fully functional, programmed in multiple techniques," and he was all nervous and everything. It was a chance to do the line a little differently now that he has the emotion chip. I thought it was good. I wish the Borg would have stayed how they were first explained, basically like locusts. Yeah, I agree with that. I saw the Queen more as an avatar as opposed to an individual. Yeah, I suppose you could actually have that makes perspective makes sense, I suppose. You see them as a face of the storm rather than an individual controlling the storm. But I believe it was because it was a hive mentality. You had the Queen controlling everything, and she was still an individual making the choices for the collective, and the collective followed her instructions. I mean, she was able to control Borg. She was, "I am the Borg." But really, I preferred the hive mentality rather than having a queen bee that controls a hive. It's just a hive. It's just a force. I always imagined the Borg as a kind of snowball effect. as an uncontrollable algorithm that just spreads like a virus, where it had you can almost imagine the Borg starting as some madman in a laboratory, some alien madman who's bent on world domination, and decides to turn himself into a cyborg. And he he creates the nanoprobes that then infect him. He creates the cyborg thing. He creates nanotechnology that gets out of hand, that develops sentience and starts assimilating him, and then it just spreads from there. I always thought that was that was how I viewed the Borg, as just this endless growth of technology mixed with biology, and then they wish to obtain perfection. And I think that was covered more in Voyager. They want to. In a sense, it's a machine that wishes to ascend and be the ultimate life form. Ironically, I thought that was a great, perhaps origin for the Borg, but the Borg Queen kind of pissed on that a little bit. Maybe the Borg Queen was a representation of that very first individual. I don't know. Queen as Avatar makes sense, but they treated her more like the mothership from Independence Day. Kill her and all the drones fall apart. Yeah, absolutely. She was a source of the collective, and I didn't really gel with me, that one. No, the Borg started as a weird social science class at some university. Yeah, Borg. Mike Kess, how are you? Good to have you here. First Contact, best Star Trek movie until the time travel jump sequence. After that, a lot of momentum disappeared. It became a bit campy and conventional with occasional jump scares. True, there were jump scares. I thought the concept was really good. The Data fake out, I thought, was okay. I don't know. It was a little convenient, contrived, perhaps. It was weird. He was playing along, getting captured. It was like, what were Data's motivations for the fake out? He got Captain Picard to come and rescue him, but Captain Picard is essentially pinned down to a table, and Data just bursts the tank with the plasma tank. But Picard's still pinned to the table. It didn't really make much sense to me as to why he would choose to fake out. It would be a case of, if he was wanting to eliminate the threat of the Borg Queen, and he was tempted for 0.68 seconds. It would strike me as a more sensible plan to have a conversation with the Borg Queen, get her in front of the tank, and then just burst the tank and end it all. Just. But you wouldn't have a very interesting, story, and you wouldn't have the revelation of them. She was there all along, which again I didn't really agree with. The little retcon there that she was there all along. I thought that was unnecessary, and it kind of dragged something away. It pulled something away from the best of both worlds, in my opinion. The opening scene, by the way, with reimagined Locutus, I thought was really good, but I didn't like the introduction and the shoehorning in of the Borg Queen. That I didn't enjoy. But yeah, First Contact, not a bad film. I still rate it as a good action film, good Star Trek action film, but it's not a very good Star Trek. In the concept of Star Trek, it's not the best. A Star Trek story, and plus time travel. I love time travel stories as much as the next man, but they are way overused in Star Trek. We all agree. Time travel episodes are just everywhere in Star Trek. I think things are a little too easily resolved with time travel episodes as well. It's like, I've made the criticism of New Trek not ignoring the butterfly effect. For example, they ignore the butterfly effect in New Trek all the time, but so did old Star Trek. It's like, yeah, you've made the warp program successful. It gets started again. But and in some ways, yeah, it was very good how Enterprise capitalized on the repercussions of the Borg fact that the Borg were there. If for example you were Captain Picard, would you not have gathered all of the Borg debris before you left Earth? It's like there's a Borg ship remnants here that haven't burned up, that have gone through the atmosphere. They haven't burned up. they're still there and they crashed in the Antarctic. Let's beam them aboard and make sure we grab everything before we go. It's like Picard season 2 when they grabbed all of the technology and they're so worried about the butterfly effect, but left Rios in the past to change the seizure time. I mentioned Picard season 2, seizure time. Fucking hate Picard season 2. Shame on me for mentioning it in the first place. Clayton, and boy, did they beat the concept of the Queen like a pinata in Picard. My God. If the pinata was a dead horse, yeah, sure. Oh, Picard. Chuck Jones, hello. I remember that the Borg represented the dehumanization of man by techno-corporatism, pre-Borg Queen. Then it changed to parallel to bees. Yes, I remember reading the Borg. Oh, that's same comment twice. So thank you very much for that. It's always good to have you here. Yeah, the whole butterfly effect thing. Whatever. They had to end the film. It ended. And I think it ended really, really good with the Ooby Dooby and the Vulcan, meeting the Vulcans. I thought the Vulcan first contacting was really good. I enjoyed that. And it's a very, very, I would say it was a very accurate way for humans to meet Vulcans. And spawned a good spin-off in Enterprise. The original screenplay by Moore and Brugger included more Borg cubes attacking. Would have made more sense. Yeah, because how many times has sending one Borg cube been successful? You know, the Borg adapt. They come up with new strategies and new plans. And in Voyager, the Borg Queen have a plan for an assimilation virus. Just to adapt, because humans are so damn hard to conquer and assimilate. And yeah, they had hey, you know what? It's been at least what's it been? Oh, it's got to have been at least 40 minutes since I had a pee, and I don't need one. Bonus. So yeah, what was I saying about the Oh, I can't even remember what I was saying. Let's sod it. Let's move on. First Contact. Good film. Just not the best. And time travel. But the effects were really good. Worf was really good in that. And I didn't like the fact that they got rid... that they killed off Lieutenant Hawk. I thought Hawk was fantastic. I really do. He just had... It was... what's his... I forget his name now. He's been in loads of things. And he was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic character. But yeah, he was assimilated. And I was like, oh, kind of got used to him. He was alright. Oh, God. Mike Kess, why would you put something like that? I'm going to read this comment out. You've put it. It deserves to be read. Michael Burnham will create the Borg Queen in season 5. Please don't. Please don't. Please don't. We've already had Jurati create a new Borg Queen. Jurati of Borg. Jurati. I liked Lily as a character. Yeah, Lily was a good character. I absolutely love Lily and Picard's interactions, especially in the observation lounge. Oh God! And Patrick Stewart did so well with that. You know, Picard losing his rag, losing his cool, and there was a little bit of tantrum there, but I thought it was really good. That entire scene, you know, Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale. Yeah. And I love that she says to Picard, you know, I've seen that look on people's faces before, you know. When you killed Ensign Lynch, you were almost enjoying it. And he's like, how dare you? That's brilliant. And it's just like, he was describing the Borg.
they assimilate entire worlds, and we just fall back. Well, not anymore. The line must be drawn here, this far, no further. And I will make them pay for what they've done. It's fright. It gave me chills when I saw that. It's Patrick Stewart. I've gone all red in the face. And it was just superb. He had his proper Ahab moment. He that was stunning. I can't believe I almost forgot about the entire scene. That was absolutely brilliant. So, no, I don't have a hernia after doing that impression. This line must be drawn here, this far, no further. It's just, I absolutely loved that bit of the film. Was absolutely brilliant. Hello. I think the wife is coming up the stairs to bed. 3, 2, 1. There she is. You can't be that sneaky, dear. You're on camera. You okay? I'm live to 11 people. But yeah, it was good film. Could you imagine it after Picard's tirade? Lily said to him, "The sheer fucking hubris." The sheer fucking hubris. Clayton says, "Hi, UK Danger Woman." We have a super chat, a £5 super chat. SAG after a strike is over. More new Trek. Oh God, yeah, more new Trek, and then more new Trek reviews, no doubt. Shall we move on to Insurrection? Have you seen Insurrection, dear?
I don't know.
I don't think Mrs. has seen Insurrection. I probably can't talk about Insurrection or
Yes, you
Nemesis.
can.
I think I might save that for another stream because we're 2 hours into this stream. But I will. If anybody wants to come on and talk about Insurrection and Nemesis, my two least favourite Star Trek films, I think that would be really cool to have a conversation because it was. Because they were the real start of the decline for the Star Trek movie franchise, and Nemesis just killed it. It was like an atom bomb. Mike Kess, keep in mind that this movie was made for under 700 million, equivalent of 10 minutes worth of 8 to 10 minutes of MCU footage. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah, that makes sense. Zell, $4.99, something for the missus. Thank you very much for that, sir. She's laughing her head off right now. Thank you very much. And yeah, she's happy. There she goes. Oh, bless you. Thank you so much for that. That's much appreciated. Yeah. Wow. That's the wife. I couldn't believe it when I did my first ever live stream of when the channel took off. And I was streaming something about Star Trek Day. It was like a Star Trek Day event or something like that. And it was the first sort of proof that my subscribers that I did have a wife and I didn't live in a basement. And YouTube friggin' deleted the video, didn't they? They banned the stream because I was talking negatively about their precious new Trek. So I'll have to re-watch Insurrection. Will it be as bad as I remember? Yeah, it was a very odd movie. It was a very odd movie because it was so underwhelming. So underwhelming in many ways. It just didn't. I don't think it hit the right beat for an entertaining movie. And Nemesis, well, yeah, it was not. Nemesis was so disjointed and so ridiculous. It didn't make a lick of sense to me. The choices and decisions that were made in that film. And you brought a director who wasn't a Star Trek alum, or he was didn't he? Stuart Baird, I think he did U.S. Marshals and a couple of other films, and yeah, it wasn't very good.
Insurrection should have been an episode. It felt like an episode, yeah, kind of like Generations did. It was basically a retelling of Who Watches the Watchers. Yeah, it had that element, and introduced a completely new enemy, a completely new alien race. Insurrection, boring as hell. I suppose, yeah. Yeah, it kind of like... And again, the effects looked a bit cartoonish, didn't they? With the Enterprise. The Enterprise looked okay, but the weapons platform that the Sona use, or their collector platform or whatever, it looked like it was hand-drawn. It looked ridiculous. SNR, Who Watches the Watchers, it was way better than Insurrection. Yeah, you're not wrong. Not wrong at all. I prefer it to be an episode of television. And Nemesis, I just don't get the writing behind Nemesis at all. I don't get the concept. I don't get why they chose to do that. It was so weird. And obviously, thankfully, Tom Hardy's career survived that film. I don't know how, but it survived that film. I like that one. Insurrection, when Riker touched the joystick. Yeah, the Enterprise had a joystick. And it actually looked like a proper gaming joystick, didn't it? It is crazy. I forgot about the PC joystick. That was nuts. I'm going to fly the ship with a PC joystick. One thing I didn't actually realise, because I saw like a collection of actors who people knew, seen them, seen what they were in, and they passed away. And the Trill on the bridge in Insurrection, apparently the actress isn't with us anymore, which I thought was quite shocking. I didn't realise that she'd gone. I forget who else was on that list, but it was like Star Trek actors that have passed away. You wouldn't know. I didn't know that. But yeah, Insurrection, when Riker went back, he shaved his beard and he went back to being Commander Babyface. It looked so bizarre. And yet so familiar at the same time to the first two seasons of Next Gen. So yeah, Insurrection was a very odd one. F. Murray Abraham was very good as the bad guy. I thought he was very good. He's good in practically everything, but he at the same time is a kind of a weak villain. And the Nemesis just had the worst villain. I thought it's like so insanely pointless, and everything that happened in Nemesis was inexplicable to me. Absolutely inexplicable. I couldn't get my head around it. The choices that were made, And it's like, well, the Tom Hardy's character says, yes, the baits, the trap that I so clearly laid out for you, and you fell for hook, line, and sinker. You okay, yeah. In the end, they didn't fall for it, but they didn't have the good sense. They found an exact copy of, they found a prototype of Data scattered on a planet near the Romulan freaking border or whatever it was, and then they didn't put two and two together very early on in the film. So why is there an android so close on this mission where we're going to deal with the Romulans? Yeah, sure, it's not a trap at all, is it? Next on Beyond Belief, did Riker really have a beard? A lot of things in Nemesis did not make sense. That I can assure you, Mrs. UK Dangerman has not seen Nemesis. I haven't had the heart to show her yet. I thought some of the acting, some of the Romulans was a bit off as well. The Romulan senators that die at the beginning of the film, it's like it's almost people just reading dialogue at this point. It wasn't very good. So I'm going to go for another 5 more minutes. I know this is actually comparatively a relatively short stream to the ones I usually do, but I do have work tomorrow. So I'll do another 5 minutes. Say what you got to say, and we can finish up. And like I say, I will cover the other two films. I'll cover Insurrection and Nemesis probably in dedicated streams, because I think that they've got a lot that needs covering. Some positives, mostly negatives. So it might make an interesting stream to do with someone if they were in the mood to do so. What in the comments? Let's put. Oh, good night, Mike. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for your comments. In the chat, just put what you think is your favourite of the 10 films. Nemesis happened because Spiner and Stewart got drunk and wrote a script. That's funny. I like that. That's good. That's really good. You should have the missus on more often. Be interesting to have an outside perspective on Trek.
The missus swears a lot.
The missus swears a lot. She's very sweary. I'd have to bring her in about 5 minutes into the stream so YouTube doesn't delete the video. There you go. Yeah, the missus coming on to a live stream. That would be interesting, actually. Yeah, I think she'd be up for that. So, Undiscovered Country is my favourite. Star Trek. Oh God, is that 4? Oh, I know. Yeah, it's 4. 1V is 4. Star Trek 4. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. The motion picture, it was the most Trek out of all of them. Yeah, I agree with that. It was a slow burn, but it was the most Trek film. I agree. Star Trek 2, the director's cut, timeless classic. Yep. Wrath of Khan. Yep. Yeah, I'd agree. That's probably my favorite. Sweary, just like me. Yeah. My wife is more sweary than I am, I would say. She does like to come up with new and interesting swear words as well, and she does like it when other people come up with new and interesting swear words. Is it twat waffle you like?
Oh, I love twat waffle.
Yeah, she likes twat waffle, and I love cunty bollocks. That's a good one. Not always appropriate though. So yeah, that's I would say my favourite. Again, it's very difficult to pick a favourite because they're all different in different ways. You know, they're all good in different ways. You know, I think Wrath of Khan is the best. It's the best film of the 10. It's the most. I think it's the most entertaining film. Well, they are from the UK. Yeah, we're a sparry bunch in the UK. I think we actually shock. Cockwomble, that's another one. See, she's got Tourette's as well. Cockwomble is another good one. Yeah, I mean, in the UK, yeah, we just were very sweary. I think we shock a lot of Americans with just how sweary we can get. My favourite is Cockwomble. There you go. Cockwomble, that's a good one. Yeah, I think Wrath of Khan is the best. But if you can grade the films on different levels, like yeah, like SR said, the motion picture is the most Trek film of them all, so you could say that's a good Trek film. Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan, Khan is a good action and thriller, a good action thriller film. Search for Spock is a good narrative film. Voyage Home is a good comedy film, I suppose you could say. Star Trek 5 is a fantastically weird mishmash hodgepodge of William Shatner's imagination. Star Trek 6 is a good real world parallel to what was happening at that time. Star Trek Generations is a superb high budget Star Trek The Next Generation episode. Star Trek First Contact is a superb modern day action film, you know, sci-fi action film of that time. Insurrection is just a glorified badly written episode, which doesn't make it good. And Star Trek Nemesis is a complete mess, directed by an outsider who just didn't really understand a lot of Star Trek. The old crew made better films, but First Contact is my number 2. There you go. My American fleet mates on Star Trek Online like to get me ranting about new Trek. They say I get very colourful and inventive with my expletives. It's a good one, yeah. Good comment, that. I like to think in my reviews I get a little special with my words. I was very selective with my words. I think the video I mentioned earlier that I've found a review. I'm still not done watching it. I've got to watch it. I've got to finish watching that before I go to sleep. And I've got to get in touch with those guys because they actually have invited me onto their stream, albeit somewhat few months back, and I've just not known. So I will go and I'll make sure I comment, and I'll leave any links to any description, any streams that I do with them, of course. But and hopefully Clayton and I can get our heads together and we can do our favourite Deep Space Nine episodes. And if you really want me to do a stream with the wife, I will do a stream with the wife happily have her on as well. And you can see just how sweary and scary she is. Love you.
Just call me scary.
I thought I'd try and get that in there without you noticing. This isn't an SOS to my subscribers, by the way. She's not that scary. She's all right. What have people called you in the past? The poison dwarf?
Yeah.
Poison dwarf.
Best insult ever.
Yeah, best insult ever. She took it right on the chin, bless her. Poison dwarf. My wife. Anyway, I think that's where I'm going to leave it tonight. It's been a nice conversation to have with you all. My throat is very dry. I'm going to go and probably have another cup of tea and then about 10 P's afterwards. Are you going to do this most Thursday evenings? Well, I'm going to try. I might not be too available in the next for the next 2 Thursdays. We'll see how that goes. But if not, I plan to do Sundays as well. I want to try and do some streams on Sundays as well. So yeah, blink twice if you're safe, Danger Man. There you go. Blink twice. Yeah, I will try and do a regular stream. I'll try and have something interesting to talk about on each of the streams. A lot of the time it's just me rambling on and you guys commenting, and we have a nice conversation, which is always nice. Mike Kess, little known fact: 1 to 10 didn't feature a lot of lens flares. Yeah. Oh, those fucking lens flares. You spend half the time blinded, don't you? So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I will leave you all in peace, and please mind how you go. Look after yourselves. Love to you all. Another great stream, always fun, Clayton. And like I say, we'll get our heads together for that stream, and I will see you all very soon. Look after yourselves. I'm going to shoot. That means go. I'm going to go.